wider relations between the EU and Africa in the European Commission and in its Directorate General for Development, and relations with the ACP countries. I would like to start by saying that for us this is a very important event, and I will try to explain why, but it is in particular important because this is, at least that is my understanding, the first time that it has been possible to gather representatives from the diaspora all over Europe in such a great number, and I'm very grateful for all of you to have come and to attend this seminar. And it will be very interesting for us, certainly for the European Commission, to discuss with you today, and I know you continue tomorrow, on further identifying how the diaspora can participate in a very large endeavor, which is our new relations between the EU and Africa. But I would like to also start by thanking the African Diaspora Policy Center for organizing this, because the biggest challenge for such a conference is always to find someone who can bring together so many players in this field. And I would also like to thank UNDP, who has facilitated this, and UNDP has been mandated and charged by the European Commission to contribute in particular to the further development, policy development, and to manage a number of activities on behalf of the European Commission in the area of diaspora and in the larger area of migration, and we will hear more about this later. Some of you may have been actively involved in the public consultation that took place last year in the run-up to the Lisbon Summit, where the European and African heads of state and government adopted what we call the Joint Africa-EU Strategy. And the event today, in a way, is also a follow-up to this public consultation, which took place last year with events in London, Lisbon, in Germany, and it shows that the European Commission and the EU as a whole is very serious about involving civil society in the implementation of this new EU-Africa partnership. And as far as today's conference is concerned, very much in particular, for one of the 8 partnerships which are part of this strategy, and that is the partnership on migration, mobility and employment, about which we will hear more later. And so for us this is a very important opportunity to enter into a dialogue with you and to try to identify how the diaspora, as one part of civil society, can be involved in this endeavor. Now, just a few words about this new partnership adopted at Lisbon. This has been is really the culmination of a process which goes back several years. You may remember that there was a first EU-Africa summit in the year 2000 in Cairo. After that, the European Union has adopted its strategy for Africa. That was in 2005. And was in itself important because member states, the European Parliament and the European Council agreed on a strategy for Africa, which is much wider already and goes far beyond development issues. But it was a strategy for Africa. And the next very important step, at the request of African governments and organizations, in particular also the African Union, was that we should come not to a strategy for Africa, but to a joint strategy between the EU and Africa. And this is what was possible at the summit in Lisbon. It first of all shows that the EU was quite prepared to change its approach from an approach, classical approach which we know of a donor-beneficiary relationship, to a relationship between equals. Now this is very nice words, but it has to be filled with life. To switch from a donor-beneficiary relationship to a relationship between equals has been stated in Lisbon and will now have to be filled with life. And again, today's event can be seen as part of this. The other very important change that I would say that the Lisbon document marks is that we look at Africa as a whole. We used to have an approach where we address different parts of Africa in a different way, and for the first time we have had all African governments and the African civil society involved in a process which really looks at Africa as a whole. And this is, I think, the second very important new development. But then when we come to the content and to the intentions of this partnership, I would like to characterize this by three ways how we present this. This partnership goes beyond development. That means development stays an important policy area for us, but our relationship with Africa goes far beyond development now. It really moves on to a dialogue on many issues which are common to us, like trade, like peace and security, like migration, like terrorism, like climate change. In the same way, this partnership also goes beyond Africa, because we look as Africa as a global player, just as the EU is a global player, and we think that we have to have common positions on global issues. And thirdly, beyond institutions, and this shows what I said first, beyond institutions means we do not see the EU-Africa partnership as a government, as just another government-to-government agreement, as we have many. We really, as I said, we are really serious about involving parliaments, civil society, NGO, in that sense, obviously also diaspora, the private sector, business. This is the real intention of this partnership, to go far beyond a government-to-government relationship. It is clear that governments, the European Commission and the Commission of the African Union, the regional organizations in Africa will play an important role, but it is not limited to that. Now, the strategy, as you may have seen, contains an action plan with concrete actions, and not actions for the long future, but actions to be tackled before the next EU-Africa Summit scheduled in 2010. So we have a very long but a very precise list of actions which we would like to achieve. These actions are grouped around 8 partnerships, which are a partnership on peace and security, one on democratic governance and human rights, one on trade and regional integration, Millennium Development Goals, a partnership on energy, one on climate change, the one I mentioned already on migration, mobility and employment, and finally, science, information society and space. These 8 partnerships, in these 8 partnerships we have organized a long list of actions which we have agreed to work to jointly between Africa and the EU. And I'm sure that the diaspora has an interest in almost all of these, or in all of these, but it is also clear that some of them certainly are more interesting for you, and that we also think that in some of those it is more important and more operational, more possible to involve the diaspora. And we would like to discuss today and tomorrow how this can be achieved.